They said the year 2020 was marked by silence. Not the quiet of peace, but the silence that follows when something is listening on the other side. It began with absences, not appearances. A man steps onto a bus, only for the driver to notice halfway through the route that no one is sitting in the back. A nurse enters a hospital ward to check vitals, only to find beds neatly arranged, every patient gone. Entire neighborhoods, entire families, gone between dusk and dawn. The world was unraveling, and no one could explain why. Shadows moved without their owners. Whispers echoed in streets long after the living had fled. Windows reflected not your face, but something waiting for it. By 2020, humanity was no longer alone in its cities, its homes, or even in its own skin. And though many refused to admit it, the prophecy was already unfolding. The fragments carved into those reliquary bones decades ago were finally being decoded. The crossing was coming. But before the end, there were harbingers. Warnings in the dark. Echoes of what was to come. And they came for us first. The first breach went unreported. It wasn't on the news, or in official records. It was whispered about in forums, shaky footage uploaded at 3 a.m. before being scrubbed by morning. It happened in St. Augustine's Hospital, a rundown building with flickering fluorescent lights and paint that peeled like old skin. Nurses began to notice shadows moving where there were no bodies. A man recovering from surgery claimed he heard the children singing in the vents. Security guards refused to patrol the East Wing after midnight. And then, one night, the ward was full. Patients, doctors, staff, 23 souls in total. At dawn, the wing stood empty. Monitors still beeped. Coffee still steamed in paper cups. Personal belongings scattered as if dropped mid-stride. But the people were gone. All that remained were the mirrors. In each reflective surface, the window, the stainless steel counters, the darkened glass of powered-off monitors, faces pressed outward, pale and straining. Their mouths moved, but no sound escaped. Nurses swore they saw colleagues, family, even themselves looking back from the other side. The hospital was locked down, then boarded up, then, finally, demolished. But the breach didn't close. It only spread. By spring, the Vanishings were no longer isolated. Cities carried a hum of fear, though no one could say it aloud. People reported the same thing across the world, whispers. They didn't come from radios or phones. They came from the cracks in walls, from drains, from the thin spaces under doors. A language no one recognized, but everyone understood. Let us in. Entire streets emptied overnight. Neighbors left behind notes, carved desperately into doors. Don't look in the glass. Cover the mirrors. Don't answer if it sounds like me. Cities hired exorcists, psychologists, anyone who claimed to understand what was happening. But the Order of the Hollow Veil, once dismissed as a fringe cult, began to rise. They weren't afraid. They welcomed the chaos. They had spent decades preparing, infiltrating. For the first time, the Order didn't hide. They appeared in news broadcasts, in political offices, even in corporate boardrooms. They spoke of a necessary realignment, of a world shared equally between seen and unseen. And behind them, always, hung the mirror of ashes, that cursed artifact that no longer showed reflections but revealed the entities waiting to cross. What it revealed chilled even the most skeptical. They didn't want to enter as guests. They wanted to wear us like clothing. The reliquary bones, unearthed decades before, had always held carvings. Symbols thought to be ritual markings, maybe funerary. But under new analysis, they revealed fragments of something older, something written in a language not meant for human tongues. Deciphered, the fragments formed a timeline. Each breach, each haunting, each bloodline cursed by contact, they were all steps toward a single event, the crossing of the veil in 2025. The bones warned not of invasion, but of substitution, that the world of the living was never meant to last forever, that another order, another race, another reality would eventually claim it. The last line translated to something that should never have been spoken aloud. When the Harbingers walk unseen, the world shall be hollowed, and the veil shall be worn as skin. And by 2020, the Harbingers had already come. It began subtly, a child's laughter echoing in an empty playground, a husband returning home from work, only for his wife to notice the reflection in the hallway mirror wasn't smiling. Then came the possessions. Not the dramatic, violent thrashings of old films. These were worse. Subtle, patient. A man sits at a dinner table with his family. He speaks the same words, shares the same jokes, but his eyes never blink. His shadow lags a second behind his movements. His reflection turns its head when he does not. A teacher lectures her class as usual, but her students notice that when she writes on the chalkboard, her reflection in the window behind her is still facing them, smiling faintly. The possessed didn't always know they were taken. Sometimes they did, and they begged their loved ones to run. But where can you run when the veil itself has thinned? The Order of the Hollow Veil declared the events not a tragedy, but a rebirth. They called themselves stewards, guides of the new world. Institutions crumbled, but the order adapted. They spread into governments, tech companies, hospitals, anywhere the veil grew thin. And with them, they carried the mirror of ashes, unveiling truths no one wanted to see. The mirror showed that the entities weren't strangers. They had faces we recognized. Dead relatives, old friends, versions of ourselves twisted by absence. The order promised a union of worlds. But the mirror revealed what that union meant: possession, assimilation, extinction of the self. And yet people joined willingly. Some out of fear, some out of devotion, some simply because they could not bear to live in a hollowed-out world anymore. By autumn, entire cities were erased. Not destroyed, just gone. Satellite images showed sprawling neighborhoods one day, nothing but overgrown land the next. Trains entered tunnels and never emerged. Planes crossed cloud cover and never descended. Those who survived swore they saw figures at the edge of vision. Entire crowds of pale shapes standing in silence, waiting. When asked what they looked like, survivors said only this: they looked like us. But wrong. Communities fortified themselves, covering every mirror, smashing every reflective surface. Windows were blacked out. Screens shattered. And still, the entities found ways in. Even a child's eye, wet with tears, could catch their reflection. Nowhere was safe. They weren't invaders in the way we feared. They were harbingers, announcers of what was inevitable. They whispered, They watched, they imitated. They did not conquer through violence, but through erosion of memory, of trust, of identity. One by one, people began to question reality itself. If your loved one smiled at you, how would you know if it was truly them? If you spoke, how would you know the echo was your own? The order spread their final message: do not resist. The veil is not breaking, it is being lifted. And what waits beneath is what we were always meant to become. And still, across the world, the prophecy carved into bone ticked toward its final line, 2025. By the end of 2020, the world was unrecognizable. Cities stood abandoned, roads emptied, homes locked, though no one lived inside. Humanity had not been wiped out, not yet, but it had been hollowed. Reflections watched us more than we watched them. Voices we trusted betrayed us. The order had taken its throne, not through war, but through invitation. The veil was no longer a barrier. It was a skin, thin, translucent, fragile. And we wore it every day. The Harbingers had done their work. The unseen were no longer unseen. The crossing was coming, and nothing could stop it.